Hey guys, Level Cap here, and welcome to Loadout, the series where you guys get to pick which weapons I play with. Today we're playing with a Wild West inspired build of the MK2 Carbine, aka the Cowboy Rifle, and the 357 Revolver in Modern Warfare. This was the top rated comment in my last Loadout video, so be sure to leave your suggestions for a chance to see it in next week's episode. Now, the MK2 Carbine is not a great gun. Modern Warfare's meta heavily favors fast-firing automatic weapons like the M4, the MP7. With the TTK being so fast, it's almost always better to have a bullet hose than a precision weapon. So using a high-precision weapon like the MK2 is incredibly challenging. Its one-hit kill potential is limited to a headshot, neck, and the upper chest. That's a lot less generous than, say, the Kar98, which also one hits to the shoulders. And what's worse is the MK2 has damage drop-off. So after about 20 meters or so, it'll only one-shot kill with headshots. Even with the maximum range attachments like the longest barrel and monolithic suppressor, you're only getting one-shot kills out to around 25-ish meters unless you hit that headshot. Now, considering the theme of this loadout is Wild West, it's actually kind of fitting that the more modern attachments aren't all that useful. The MK2 is built to be a speed machine. Its limited range and fast lever action make getting those two-tap kills much easier than with the bolt-action weapons. That's not to say it doesn't work as a long-range sniper rifle, however. When I first started experimenting to find an interesting loadout for the MK2, I put on the longest barrel and sniper scope. In this configuration, it performs okay. Even without the faster ADS attachments, its ADS time with the sniper scope is faster than the AX50 or HDR. That makes quick scoping in on targets pretty easy, especially at long range where you have to keep track of the enemy while the scope is pulled up. If you land headshots with the MK2 in this configuration, it's a fast-killing and satisfying weapon. But you're also very limited in how you can engage. In close quarters, you're dead. There's no going toe-to-toe with the M4 tryhards using the MK2 in such a slow loadout. You're pretty much at a disadvantage 100% of the time. Falling back on the revolver also proved to be incredibly challenging. The pistol requires high precision shooting. It's got a pretty awful hipfire accuracy without the laser sight, so quick swapping between the MK2 and the revolver to get cleanup kills is just not really going to happen. That's pretty much the exact opposite of what happened with my previous loadout video using the Kar98 and the M1911 for a World War II themed kit. In making that video, I found the M1911 to be an incredibly powerful weapon that could almost replace a primary weapon in some situations. And it was hard breaking that habit of quick swapping to the revolver if my first shot with the MK2 wasn't a kill shot. In Battlefield 5, for example, when sniping, that is actually the smartest thing to do. It's so fast to swap weapons and get a cleanup kill with your pistol in that game. So yet again, I had to overcome years of muscle memory to use the MK2 as a proper sniper rifle. The whole time I was trying to use the MK2 in this configuration, it felt like I was putting myself at a big disadvantage and pushing the gun into a realm in which it really wasn't meant for. In general, most other players using the MK2 kitted out with a close-range optic, a laser sight, and all the fast ADS attachments like stippled grip tape and the FFS Sport Comb stock. With this setup, it becomes a run-and-gun monster. Unfortunately, though, they didn't have lasers in the 1850s, so I had to make do with basically no attachments for the run-and-gun loadout I ended up with. I equipped the cartridge sleeve stock for more starting ammo and the focus perk to reduce flinching when shot. For the revolver, again, my options were pretty limited, but I do pick the lightweight trigger to fit the classic quick draw Western feel. For perks, I went with Cold-Blooded because, hey, I'm a cold-blooded cowboy, Ghost for the surprise ambush, and Amped for the fastest draw in the West, or in the game rather. The loadout comment also suggested using the Molotov as my grenade, and I was shocked by how good it is. And finally, I picked Stim as my tactical gadget, which we'll just say is a shot of moonshine given this theme. To complete the look of my West loadout, I also grabbed the Outback skin for Wyatt. And with my loadout locked in and sporting my finest cowboy threads, I got into the action. And right off the bat, I gotta say, the iron sights for the Mark II suck. The sight picture they give is clean and easy to use, but the sight guards, or the things that poke up on either side, really obscure targets, especially if you stay ADS'd while cycling the lever action. In situations where I needed that critical follow-up shot, I often found the iron sights would block vision of the target as they moved or ducked behind cover. I died a bunch just trying to stay on target. The big benefit of using iron sights is it maximizes your ADS speed. This is why the sniper scope was so hard to use without additional attachments that lowered the ADS time. But even without a bunch of attachments, the Mark II still performed well. I was actually surprised at how well I did in some matches while using it. You need to be in close quarters for the Mark II to work, of course, which means you're going to go toe-to-toe with automatic weapons. So if you can consistently surprise or flank the enemy team, its one-shot kill potential will make it incredibly deadly. And even if you have time to land a follow-up shot on one target, you're probably going to get killed by someone else in the process. You need to go for the head almost 100% of the time with this gun. As for the revolver, it's a gun, I guess. The only times I really found myself using it were when I was caught reloading the Mark II. And even then, I'd rather just wait on a couple of rounds to get reloaded and then just rely on the revolver to pick up any slack. Now, once I got used to the iron sights, it was still challenging using the Mark II. Those speed attachments are really what make it such a strong weapon, and without them, you're relying more on your map knowledge and accuracy than the gun's actual potential for damage. This is what makes the Mark II such a fun and rewarding gun to use. Even fully kitted out, you know every kill you get with the Mark II is one miscalculation away from being a death. And when it works out, it's a kind of satisfaction you can't get from most other weapons in modern warfare. Everything is so insanely lethal in this game that sometimes it feels like a stiff breeze could net you a quad kill. So to go around with a gun like the Mark II with no useful attachments and still do well feels incredible. And at times it really did feel like I was in a classic western where the hero wins the day against all odds. Usually video games take a lot of liberties with the real-life weapons they simulate, but I think Infinity Ward nailed both the look and feel of the original rifle. The Mark II's limited range in-game is actually a trait carried over from its real-life counterpart, the Marlin Model 1895. It was a tried and true lever-action rifle used by trailblazers of the American West, but it wasn't nearly as popular as the more standard bolt-action rifles of this era due to its lower muzzle velocity. In the 22 years it was produced, it only sold about 18,000 units. Marlin reintroduced the 1895 in the 70s as more of a hunting rifle, and it's enjoyed a pretty long-term success since. Now, as far as the Wild West loadout is concerned, I think it's a fun way to challenge yourself. It certainly challenged my aim. After a few hours of playing with the Mark II and switching back to an automatic weapon, they just felt like the easiest things in the world to use. I noticed I was hitting headshots more consistently. I was also able to rely on map knowledge more than I usually do. Using an M4 kind of makes you forget how powerful a flank can be, so you end up running headfirst at the enemy team. Focusing on map knowledge and using it effectively a few matches will do wonders for your general gameplay, regardless of the weapon. Modern warfare sometimes feels like it's encouraging you to just run headfirst everywhere, but if you take a few extra seconds on a flank or wait for the enemy team to expose themselves, it can give you a huge advantage. Now, what about actually kitting out the Mark II for maximum performance regardless of thematic attachments? The key thing to keep in mind is that the Mark II has one great thing going for it, and that's its one-hit kills to the upper chest under 20 meters. The more you can maximize your chances of hitting those critical one-hit kill shots, the better it performs. Go with a red dot sight over a magnified optic. At range with a sniper scope, sniper rifles and other assault rifles will just outclass you. Because the barrel attachments don't do anything useful, you can forego them and pick the speed boosting attachments. I'd recommend the Sport Stock and the stippled grip tape. Now, it's hard to say if the 5 milliwatt laser sprint to fire stacks with the stippled grip tape, but having a tighter hipfire spread is still pretty useful. The Mark II works almost like a shotgun from the hip if you're close enough. As for the perk selection, I go with flinch just because I like to stay ADS'd for follow-up shots, but sleight of hand can also be a good option. Overall, I think it's maybe a little unfair when I said the Mark II Carbine isn't a great gun. It's certainly not a weapon that I would consider a competitive gun, but I don't want to betray how good it can be in the right situations. It's not going to compete with the insane TTKs of most automatic weapons, but it's not like you're holding a pea shooter either. The Mark II is a devastating one-hit kill weapon that has the potential to pick people off at medium range and even deal with multiple targets in close range. It's not a very versatile weapon, like don't expect a combination of attachments to magically make it more viable than an HDR at sniping, and unlike a lot of guns in modern warfare, there just isn't anything that fundamentally transforms the Mark II. It's always going to be the Mark II, regardless of how you kit it out. But if you build your loadout to suit your strengths, you'll have a good time with it. And that's all I've got for this Wild West episode of Loadout. If there's a weapon loadout you would like to see me try next, leave it in the comments. I'll pick one of the top rated comments for the next week's episode. Until then, make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.